All right, it is day 2 of our brand new experiment with Busy Book Club. This time we covered chapter 2 of Make by Pieter. That was the chapter all about finding ideas. So in my reading, I came across 5 main ideas, and we'll go through them one by one. Number 1, solve your own problems, because you understand them better than anyone else, and if you try to solve other people's problems, you're not going to do a good job because you probably don't know enough about those problems. He gives the example of himself trying to create a healthcare app when he's not a doctor, he doesn't actually know anything about healthcare. So his app probably wouldn't be particularly good. If you're lucky, other people will have the same problems as you. And he gives this really great anecdote where he talks about how he made this spreadsheet for finding the best cities for digital nomads, and he forgot to lock editing. And when he came back, hundreds of other people had contributed to his spreadsheet. They had added more cities, added more columns, and that accidental crowdsourcing eventually became a business in itself. And I thought that was just such a cool story that kind of speaks to how openly sharing your ideas can lead to newer things. Key idea number 2 is start small. Look at niches. Your idea doesn't have to change the world. Serving a niche group of just a few thousand people can be enough to earn millions in revenue. In the book, there's even this really simple multiplication table that shows all the different ways to earn $1 million if you're charging a certain amount. Big companies ignore niches because they're too small, which leaves an opportunity for individual builders. And when you find success in a niche, you can always expand to adjacent niches. There's nothing wrong with having an idea that's small. You can always grow later. Number 3 is to keep track of your ideas. This is actually what the YouTube short was about. Start with the concepts. That's kind of where all your brainstorming goes. And then when an idea starts to look good, you put it in the promising category. And when you're ready to build it, you put it in the building category. And then from there, you either categorize it as a success or a failure. The 4th key idea is to be careful about collaboration. You want to avoid groupthink. So groupthink is this concept where there are too many voices in a room, and because of the group dynamic, you end up with a worse result than if those individual people had worked alone rather than working as a group. And even with regards to asking for advice on your idea, Pieter says, just build it. Just build the app, build the thing, and let the market be the real judge of its value. If you take too much advice from other people, that might cause you to not build the idea in the first place. If you get too much advice from other people and they don't get it and they tell you not to build it, they could actually talk you out of building something that was actually really great had you actually executed it. And then the 5th and final key idea that Pieter talks about is how you should share your ideas. He says a lot of people are worried about having their ideas stolen, but Pieter makes this really good point in that when it comes to businesses, ideas by themselves don't create businesses. It's the idea paired with the execution that creates a business. And the beautiful thing about sharing your ideas is you can potentially get feedback on them, and you won't necessarily get stuck with your own kind of overly optimistic biases. He even quotes Derek Sivers, "To me, ideas are worth nothing unless executed. They are just a multiplier. Execution is worth millions. To make a business, you need to multiply the two. The most brilliant idea with no execution is worth $20. The most brilliant idea takes great execution to be worth 20 million. So naturally, after reading this chapter, I found myself reflecting a little bit on Busy Book Club and do I think it's a good idea? Is it worth carrying on? I guess the main question is, what problem does this channel solve? And you can actually find the answer if you look at the very first video on this channel. I talk about getting really excited about finding a new idea in a book and not being able to share it with anyone because no one else is reading the book at the same time as you. And as an avid reader of these kind of like productivity, businessy psychology books, I have all the subscriptions that you've heard of, like Audible, Blinkist, Shortform. And I kind of think of Busy Book Club as in the same arena as Blinkist and Shortform. But my challenge with those two platforms, even though they're really great for getting summaries, they're very cold in a way. Like, you can tell those summaries, the people who are writing those summaries they either aren't given the freedom to be particularly expressive, or maybe they don't care as much about those books as someone like me might. Personally, I just wanted to create a space where people could be excited by new ideas in these books and be reading them at the same time. So it feels more like a community rather than me just reading by myself. All right, and that takes us to the last section. I didn't realize that each chapter had homework, and I don't think I'm going to be able to do the homework for every chapter, and especially like in this case, homework was to spend the next 7 days making a list of problems you have in your life and trying to find 3 ideas every day, and so that by the end of the week you'd have a list of ideas. I'm probably not going to do the homework for 7 days, but I will do the homework at least once. I'm going to share with you 3 ideas that I've had in the past, and in the spirit of sharing ideas, I'll put them out there. I don't have any intent on executing any of these anytime soon, so I'll put them out there, and you can let me know what you think in the comments. Idea number 1 is Jackbox for live streamers. So, like a lot of people during the pandemic, I got really into Jackbox. And if you don't know what Jackbox is, it's a party game where there's usually like one screen, like a TV or a computer, and everyone can dial in with their phone, and they kind of submit answers privately, and that affects the game on the shared screen. So during the pandemic, what a lot of people would do is they would go on Zoom or on Twitch, and the party screen that has kind of the game state on it, they would put that up, and people all over could play along. But there were always 2 big challenges with that. One was you could never get the right number of players. Like, if it was just you and 2 friends, like there were so many games that required a minimum of 4 people. Or if you had like a bigger party, it was really hard to find games that could support more than 8. So I think that would be problem number 1. And then problem number 2 is because the game was getting shared through Zoom or Twitch, there would be this huge delay for the game state, but your controller on your phone, that would be live. So sometimes you would see things happening on your phone that were ahead of what you were actually seeing on Twitch or Zoom. And I think you could solve that by having a game state on the phone as well. I think Jackbox designed around live streaming could be a really cool idea. Second idea, it probably exists in some form, but I haven't done the research, so you can let me know if I'm being silly by even talking about this. There's probably something with regards to social media consultants. I don't know if this is a concept that exists, but being a content creator is famously one of the most sought after careers for young people today, but it's also one of the most complicated. Speaking from experience, like learning how to create a YouTube thumbnail, learning how to edit a video, doing sound effects, doing music, all of that is a lot for one person to do. And I think it would be really interesting if there were a company that had experts on each of these individual fields that could help people with special projects every time they want to like level up their production. So for example, this past weekend I was trying to update the color scheme for Busy Book Club. I don't know anything about color theory. It's just not something that I've ever done before. And potentially a company like this could maybe guide me and give me advice on, colors that might be appealing in thumbnails, or colors that are not too bright or distracting, that, work well with the algorithm or whatever. And then finally, you can't have a business idea that doesn't include AI. So I did come up with an AI idea, and it is centered around documentation, specifically for large software projects. As someone who works on a lot of large software projects, one of the biggest issues is you're not really rewarded for having great documentation. There's not really a lot of incentive, both in open source and in large companies. I think it would be really interesting if you could have like an AI agent that could monitor code changes in Git, or even like help forums or, Slack messages, so that whenever somebody had a question, and the developer answered it, the documentation could be updated within a few minutes. That way you could always have up-to-date documentation, and you could have developers spending more time coding rather than writing documentation. So with that, let me know what you think of those ideas. Are they terrible? Would you use them? If you're reading along, let me know what you thought of Chapter 2 idea, and I will see you tomorrow for Chapter 3. See ya.